When you got married, things were perfect. You were both in love and life was good. Then, somewhere along the line, everything changed. She changed, or maybe he did. Either which way, now your relationship feels, well, hard. I coach husbands and wives who feel lonely, disrespected, or misunderstood in their relationship. So many women today are desperate for their husbands to step up to the plate, to make a decision and to stick to it, to lead rather than to follow. Ladies, you have the power to make it happen. Men respond best to women who are grounded in their feminine core. As for husbands, so many of them want their wives to stop nagging and to just trust them, to smile more and to complain less, to look at them the way they did when they were first dating. Men, you have the power to make it happen. Women respond best to men who are grounded in their masculine core. The secret to lasting love rests in the masculine-feminine dance. Once you master it, your relationship will no longer be difficult. You'll be moving with the biological tide rather than against it, and that makes marriage smooth sailing. If you're struggling in your relationship, if you feel frustrated or alone, I can help. Just go to SuzanneVenker.com, that's SuzanneVenker.com, and click on the coaching button at the top. Don't wait another minute to acquire the mindset you need to find love and to sustain it. It's so much easier than you think. That's SuzanneVenker.com. Welcome back to the Suzanne Venker Show. I'm your host, Suzanne Venker, and we are doing something new starting today. Once a month, I am going to talk to you directly and not interview a guest. And my sidekick for this new venture is Andre Parody, whom you've heard me interview in the past. He's out in LA. He is the founder of Project Equinox, and he has a wonderful podcast of his own called How the Culture Gets It Wrong. And Andre and I are very like-minded, and I thought he would make a super sidekick for this new venture I'm doing, where I talk to you all about the issues of the day. So say hello, Andre.
Good morning.
Good morning, and it's beautiful out there in LA, right?
It's early morning, and the sun's coming up, and it's going to be beautiful and warm, and it already is. But yeah, glorious Los Angeles day.
Awesome. So I have a bunch of things to talk about. You ready to kind of get on it?
Totally. I love
All right,
stuff.
so here's my first one. Oh my gosh. Did you hear about Arby's restaurant in Minnesota who had a sign? This is so funny. So this has to do with parenting. Basically, Arby's is dealing with a lot of let's say ill-behaved children in its restaurants rather. And so they had to put up a sign that said, only well-behaved children who can keep their food on their trays and their bottoms on their seats are welcome. If you can't do this, you'll be asked to leave. Thanks. Okay, seems like that's what they had to do. If you own the restaurant or you're running it and this is happening, seems like a perfectly reasonable response. Okay, so guess what happens? Someone got so upset that that sign was there, because of course it was a personal affront to the fact that they couldn't handle their own kids, that they actually pulled the sign down.
No.
They did. So this is all part of this, what's now known as cancel culture, which basically means you are forced out of doing what you need to do for your business because someone's offended. And of course, we're hearing about it left and right in the media. And this one struck me because it had to do with parenting and how we've all experienced unruly kids in our midst and feel utterly, you feel bad for the parents, right? But then you also are mad that they can't control them. And then it kind of ruins everybody's experience. And so it was a perfectly reasonable response. And yet they've taken it down.
Wow. We live in society, right? We live in society, in public. We're all together everywhere. And so the idea that you can't sort of have rules about, keeping things in certain harmony is too much now.
Right. Exactly.
Well, what, So,
and this is this world that we're living in terms of being offended by everything. And so that when you're offended by everything, if you're so busy being offended, then you can't possibly have any rules and structure. And then the rules and structure will break down and there's just chaos. Did you hear about Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know about Chick-fil-A. Yeah. It's like the same idea, right?
Same idea, only I'm possibly holding my judgment on that because I'm still trying to. It's very new. It just came out yesterday.
Yeah.
But they finally they said their Chick-fil-A is to stop donation to charities with anti-LGBT views. And there's a little bit more to this story, I think. But at the end of the day, they're having to cave to pressure for associating with companies that are anti-gay marriage or what have you. And in the past, that was their right to you give to who you want as a company is the bottom line. And if you don't agree with that, then don't patronize the place. But now, and it was kind of a big deal because Chick-fil-A, of course, is closed on Sundays, and they make powerful statements with where they put their money and how they do their business, and to have them stop the donations was a big cave. It just was a big cave any way you look at it. So it's just a bigger issue of the same Arby's concept. So anyway.
I mean, it's, what do you do with, where do you go from there, right? Where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there? I mean, seriously, if you can't even have the few people who are left standing, if they're going to cave, then what hope is there for the rest of us?
Yeah, I mean, you can't say anything, you can't do anything, you can't disagree with anybody. You have to go with the flow. You have to be PC. You have to agree on everything, whether it makes sense or not. It's just kind of really ridiculous. And for myself, I find myself like pushing back. I had this very conversation with my assistant yesterday, who's gay, and I have no problem with the fact that she's gay. But when the movement is forcing things on us, this is why I have a problem. And they're claiming, that they're demanding respect for who they are and what they believe in, and that's fine, right? I get it, right? You want to be who you want to be, and you have the right to be who you want to be. It's beautiful, but if you're going to force it down my throat or anybody's throat, if you're going to force respect, you can't demand respect. You have to earn respect. So if you respect me, and my beliefs, and don't push anything on me or force anything on me, the chances are I'm going to respect that much more than. So you want respect, you have to cultivate respect, but the movement is really pushing back and forcing down people's throat. And
having the opposite effect of what they
exactly.
Right. I couldn't
agree
more.
That's the part where if you could look at it for how things work, really, what makes sense, what works better, stop pushing, stop forcing, stop demanding, stop insisting, so people can respond, much more without pushing. Without the reaction is just natural. If you push on me, I'm going to push back.
Exactly.
That's instinctual. So they're doing it wrong, as far as I'm concerned. What they're looking for, they're going about it backwards, and it's just making everything much more tense. And when people, of course, push back because you're pushing, and then you go, oh, they're anti-Semitic, LGBT, anti, and it's like, well, stop, chill, like respect the others so you have a chance to be respected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get into more of what you and I are very passionate about in terms of gender relations and men and women and masculinity and femininity. And here's another story similar to what we're just talking about that's more up our alley. There was a birth coach in the UK who was hounded out of her charity, her industry charity, because transgender activists branded her Facebook message bad because she had the audacity to say that only women can have babies. A birth coach has been ostracized by her professional organization after transgender advocates branded as offensive a Facebook post in which she said that only women can have babies. Lindsay McCarthy Calvert, 45, was forced to stand down as spokesperson for Doula UK and has since resigned altogether because she had the audacity to say only women give birth.
Well, who else gives birth?
Well, if you're a transgender rights activist,
no, you don't give birth.
Nope.
You could identify as anything, but you don't give birth. You still have a Y chromosome. Yeah. What are we talking about here? Like, help me.
It's insanity. It is just insanity. So this whole cancel culture started by just sort of being slightly offended by not wanting to hear views that differ from your own, to now outright dismissal of basic biological facts and logic and
nature. Yeah. Well, where do you think that's going to take us? Because I see this, it's the ridiculousness is so far. Where's that going to end up? It's got to fall flat somewhere eventually. I mean,
well, I'm a little less concerned with. I mean, I'm pointing these out just to talk about the insanity of it. But these extreme examples, I'm less concerned with. I'm more concerned with policies and cultural narratives that hurt, as you and I both know, that hurt people's chances for happiness in their relationships and in their families. So that ultimately that's all politics. But for example, how the politics leads into the personal is where I'm more concerned. So, okay. So for example, I also wrote a couple weeks ago about this California's Paid Family Leave Act out where you are. I don't know if you heard about that, but there's a new paper that was published by the National Bureau of Economic Research that found that California's 2004 paid leave law, which was an attempt to get more women to remain in the workforce after the birth of a child by providing an extra 6 weeks of paid leave at 55% of their pay, did not do what it was supposed to do. Okay? That they thought for sure that all the policies in the world to get women to reject caregiving for their own babies and get them back into the workforce. And they thought they were going to lead the way because there's only 2 states in the country right now that offer this paid leave. You can leave without pay, of course, but this was paid. And it's been tried now for what? I guess that makes it 15 years, 2004. And it's not working. It's completely backfiring. Women are not coming back because guess what happens? What happens? What happens, Andre?
They want to stay with their babies.
They want to stay with their babies.
Look at that nature again, just kicking in,
Look at
right?
that.
Like nature just in your face, this, like trying to control things that are instinctive.
So, Andre, did you hear about this comment from Emma Watson about being self-partnered?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So in a Vogue interview, she says, she's turning 30, and you know what happens when women turn 30, Andre?
Hello, of course, TikTok,
and of course that's not nature's fault. That's society's fault, right? Society's making them feel this pressure. It has nothing to do with their bodies or just the way life works, right?
Right.
So she says in this Vogue interview, if you have not built a home, if you do not have a husband, if you do not have a baby, and if you're turning 30 and you're not in some incredibly secure, stable place in your career, or you're still figuring things out, there's just this incredible amount of anxiety, which... Now, that part wasn't blaming anybody. That statement is absolutely true.
Yeah.
That, unfortunately, in our attempts to help women kind of avoid that trap or feeling that way, we, by suggesting that they maybe map out their lives a little earlier or just be aware of the biological clock and the fact that it's real and it's there and you have to work with it. All we get in the media is junk about how society's holding women back by making them feel pressured to have babies by a certain period of time, and that there's all these options for women today that they can have, babies up into their 40s. That's the kind of stuff that makes me nuts.
Well, it's just, again, I think for me, part of it is all instinctual, right? Again, I have women clients who, very consciously have decided to not have babies, and I agree with this. Some women should not be mothers, right? It's like you're designed for this stuff, but some are not,
Certainly.
Right? So there's women that actually make a conscious choice not to have kids. Good for you for whatever reason, right? Whether it's career or temperament, she won't do it. She's not good at it. She knows it's going to be terrible. Ultimately, also feel there's something wrong with them, because again, the instinct and, instinct kicks in at one point, because that's what women do, have babies, procreate is how we could, it's how like our genetics are working. There's an instinct to reproduce first, before being happy, before being fulfilled in life, before building a life. Like there's an instinct to procreate first. Same for men as well, to continue the species. So there's a battle, with our culture with, you have to go, business first and be productive, successful, make some money, all this stuff. But the inner instincts also kicks in, which is a mind screw for the ladies where, there's something wrong with you. You should have babies, From there, like I find my clients completely battling typically what they want as opposed to, what instinct sort of pulls them in. And so the idea of having it all comes in this place there where, I've had this conversation last week where what seems to work better, a woman who wants it all, seems to work better is to start a career and schooling for a career, early 20s, and within, in her 20s, actually start looking for a relationship and a husband and have a couple of kids, pause that development of her life for at least 5 years, typically, when the kids go to kindergarten. Most women will extend that, but you could go in with the idea of I'm just taking a pause. 5 years on a lifeline, right? The line of your life is nothing.
It's nothing.
Right?
It's absolutely nothing.
And then you get everything. You get to have the relationship, the husband, the kids, the family, right? Pause for 5 years. Some women go to 7 and 10 years. Just again, instinctively want to be there for the children. Beautiful stuff, right? And then resume their life in the world and pick up their career where it was, because they have a husband who supports the machine. So there's no urgency necessarily but they want to be productive and part of the world and bring their gifts. Beautiful. And now we know with data, right? The women, when they're a little bit older and happy because their lives are in place and they're connected, with all the relationships around them that makes them feel good, are actually more able to focus and be productive and be happier later.
Right, because if you don't have your personal life in order and you're out there doing what society wants you to do, you're going to have this angst, and that angst is going to spill over into your working, that's why so many of them, even when they have the paid leave, like we talked about before, it sounds good. Right? Yeah. Theoretically, it sounds good before you're actually holding that baby in your arms. Yep. But then something happens, right? Your entire world shifts. The seas part when a baby is on your chest, and your own baby is on your chest, and all of a sudden work just seems so irrelevant.
Totally.
It just seems irrelevant. And so eventually, it won't always feel that way, but it's going to for some time. So the idea that you're going to be paid for 6 weeks and then come back, well, of course it's not working.
It's so silly, really, in a way. I get the concept, right, is that children are just so disruptive in your life, right? So you want them, but is you have to rearrange everything. It's disruptive. So a lot of people that I see are opting out of having a life with children because that's going to ruin their lives, right? Their careers, their bodies, their lifestyle. You know what I mean? Yeah. Money and freedom. Yeah.
It's such a massive value shift from the way it's always been. That's really at the core of it. It's this value shift of work over relationships, and it's so unbelievably dysfunctional. I went to Princeton last week, and I don't know if I told you that, to talk to young women, and the point of the point of my talk was how to have a happy, balanced life. That means preparing in advance for being out of the workforce for a time. You have to prepare for that in advance. There are several things you can do with that, like marry smart was one of the things that I was telling them.
Yes.
Marry smart. You can't marry someone who's not going to be able to support you at some point if you want to step out. You need to not make financial decisions that demand two incomes prior to having children, so that you don't set yourself up to then demand it because you've made these financial decisions. Like if you buy a home based on two incomes, let's say, right, and you just don't even consider the fact that you're not going to be in the workforce, then you do get screwed down the line, and you call me and say, I want to be home with my kids and I can't be. So, right, I'm all about trying to help women not get in that boat to begin with. But of course, I'm up against massive cultural pressure and narratives that tell them opposite. So, like, I want to talk about for a minute this new movie that's coming out, Frozen 2. Does your marriage or love life feel hard? I get a lot of emails from readers who are struggling in their relationships. Unfortunately, the help an individual or couple needs can rarely be answered in a series of back-and-forth emails. For this reason, I offer coaching for individuals who are struggling in their relationships and for couples whose marriages feel stuck. Just go to SuzanneVenker.com and click on Coaching at the top to sign up for a session with me. That's SuzanneVenker.com. Did you see Frozen 1?
Of course. I have kids. I saw it many times.
Yeah, I think we have kids kind of the same age-ish.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing it, and I have to tell you, when I first saw Frozen, I'm sitting through it. And my daughter, you can't see a movie or even a TV show with me because of what I do, without staring at me. She stares at me every 5 minutes, like trying to determine what I'm thinking,
right.
Because she knows the minute she hears something with a message in it that I'm thinking something. So
right.
It was really hard for me to hold my tongue because it was so, it was such a magnificent film in terms of the music and just the whole, the physicality of it. But of course I hated the messages all the way through. So I was having this sort of love-hate relationship with this film, and she was still young. And of course, who doesn't love that song? So it was really funny. But at any rate, so Frozen 2 is coming out soon, and they're going to up the ante a little bit with that, I think. But the bottom line is that film is a perfect example of the cultural narrative that's trying to undo, decades of the typical fairy tale message about strong man rescues, soft woman or what have you, by flipping that on its head and making a very clear message that women don't need men. And in that movie, they actually, I believe, turned the good guy at the beginning into a villain. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but so he had a regular old good guy, but he becomes the villain, and then sisterhood. It becomes all about sisterhood and this idea that you don't need a man. So of course I hated the film, despite everybody loving it, and I had to sort of pick carefully who I was going to talk to about that film. Well, what about you? Did you have the same?
Well, I'm the same. I see the messages in everything, everything, and it's sort of my kids look at me the same way. I go, oh, here we go, Dad's going to go off now. Right.
Exactly.
That's gonna go off, right? And they wait for it. They know it's coming, right? I mean, and I get all like, oh God, enough of that. Anyway, but I mean, the man, women don't need men. It just makes me. I just don't know how anybody's really truly bought into this the way they have. I mean, and I remember hearing stuff like this years and years ago, and we all used to laugh, going, "This is so stupid. It's not going to grab." You know what I mean? It's not going to grasp. No one's going to buy this crap. And all of a sudden, here we are. Like, everybody's bought this crap. It's in our culture. That's my podcast, breaking down the ridiculousness of some of these things. But, it's interesting for me that women have bought into this idea that marriage is a terrible thing, where actually marriage is the best thing for women. Yep.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, Andre. Let's talk about that. Because that's something that you don't hear a lot. Explain why marriage is a good thing for women.
Well, I mean, get this. Instinctively, men want to provide and protect women, children, animals, the planet, right? Men are provider protectors instinctively. So get this. So men want to take care of women they care for naturally, instinctively. You don't have to manipulate them into this. Look at it. This is the best deal in the world. Men will go to work, kill themselves to provide and protect for their loved ones, without having to be manipulated, right? They want to do this. We want to do this. What is the problem? Right? I saw this comedian lady, she's hysterical. She's on stage pregnant, right? And she's talking about her life as a woman in this world. And she says, everybody around me, trying to make her, a badass and, you go girl and girl power, right? And boss babe. And she said this, I forget who said this, the CEO of, I think, Google, a woman who said something like, ladies, you have to learn to lean in. You have to learn to lean in the world.
Sheryl Sandberg.
Sandberg. That's right. And she's on stage. She goes, I don't want to lean in. I want to lay down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that, gosh.
Because, as a woman with a baby coming, right, she needs to rest. She needs to recover. She needs to take care of the kid. It's going to be a lot of work. It's exhausting, right? Why take all this on herself, right? This is where the culture gets it wrong, where we think women can do it all and have it all, and it's impossible. You can't. Not in the way that they say you can, right? To be a CEO, a boss babe, and have a couple of kids and a husband and a family and a household and make that all work is too much.
And that reminds me of something that you talked about once on your podcast, which I loved, and I have had on my notes to ask you to talk about, because I thought it was a brilliant way of putting it. You talked about the difference between being a career woman and being a woman with a career.
Yeah.
Now, before you say anything, I clearly fall in the latter group. I knew exactly what you meant when you said that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that everybody does, so I want to talk about that. But it goes to what you just said when you said having it all in the way that it's demanded of the culture, which is that you can be this top CEO and you can also be this great wife and mother. Yeah. Obviously, that's not possible. But that doesn't mean that you don't have any career of any kind. So again, that's something else that I've spent a great deal talking about is making your plans more realistic for your other goals. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't want a family, more power to you. Mm-hmm. But if you do, you have to lower – people don't like to say lower your expectations. Okay, so make them more realistic. Whatever you want to say, if you're starting way, way, way too high, then there's nothing wrong with lowering them because you're too high. But if you want to call it just being more realistic, that's fine. Something that works alongside motherhood, and that's something that I did when I was in college. I started thinking about this way before a lot of my contemporaries did, right. And it came out, and it was just a win-win for me in the end. I think that's one of the things that makes it so different for me when people say, how did you do what you do and still have, a family and all of that? And it was because I started way ahead of time planning for this, and I was realistic in what I could accomplish or wanted to accomplish. And when you said woman with a career versus a career woman, mm-hmm. I'm like, that's it. That's mm-hmm. it right there. So go.
Yeah. So, you are a woman with a career as opposed to a career woman, which means you put things in order for it to work long term, and to get actually the dream is to have it all, right? Which means when you were a younger woman, I know you started a little bit late, but as a woman that had a career, but on your focus was at one point family and children. Now that has to become, family and children. Finding a good man is a full-time job in the beginning. Like it takes a lot of focus.
Tell me about it. I had to go through one to get to the good one.
Exactly, right?
I mean, one actual marriage.
And you have to be with men to understand men. You have to be with a lot of men to start feeling out their character, their temperament, what you like, what you don't like, and you start recognizing, well, I don't like that type of guy, and I've seen this before. That more of this, right? And so you have to be in the world with men, dating men. It's a lot of work. That's why women who have careers don't typically end up dating enough or finding the right guys, because they don't have the time, space, energy to do it. A woman with a career understands that she wants to participate in life, and bring her gifts, however, to have it all. She gets the fact that, that has to take second place for a little while to find the right man, a good quality man, a man who actually wants to take care of her, step up, has his stuff together, has character, becomes a man who wants to also build a life and a family, right? And then you put that in place, you have 1 or 2 kids or 3 or whatever. I have a client who has 6. You believe that? All over the place. I love
Actually,
it.
I have a couple of good friends with a lot of kids, so yes, I
do. Because especially when you have 1 or 2, you realize the magic of that. And
yes,
I almost wanted to continue myself, but
yeah, me too.
So the magic of that, and then like I said, the on the other side of motherhood, a few years later, it's only a few years. They actually are able to. They're happy, they're solid, their life is good, the connections, for women, the relationships, all the relationships around her is truly what makes her more happy. When the relationships around her are good, she's happy, right? And from that place is a woman to step into the world again and bring her gifts and her talents and build something, in the world. Boom, right? So you get the whole gamut. One thing that I want to say that nobody's talking about, it's not on the radar, is that, when you think children are going to ruin everything, when you think marriage is not, something that you want money first to make you feel safe and secure, and that's the end-all, be-all. These are all my clients, right? By the time they get to 40, they've been so masculinized, they're so manly because they've been in man mode all these years, can't attract men, can't find men, have no idea who men are. They've never spent enough time around men to even matter to figure it out. So they're struggling with this. And now I have 2 clients who at 40, when they actually help them find a relationship, but by the time a year later they want to start a family, both of them were dry, no more eggs. Lost, and these are women who wanted families more than anything. Waited too long, ouch. Right?
It's just, I can't get my head around, like, I get if you didn't know whether or not you wanted kids, I can see that happening, but I can't understand letting that happen if it's really important to you? I
Right.
mean, like, what did they think was going to happen? I can't
Well, yes,
quite grasp
they
that.
they forget, they don't understand that somehow they've been, they've been sort of like conned by culture that you have to feel safe first and have money first, and the rest of it is cake. But that's not. You know what I mean? This
And
is
that's why that whole. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was what I was going to say is really, what they don't know, what you and I know, and people who have had children know, is that, if you don't have kids, if you don't have kids and you wait too long and now you cannot have kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's impossible and you miss out on that. I'm watching my own family do this. Like, what is like? Imagine you and you, right? Like not having kids and coming home just to your husband. And
I thought about that just yesterday. That's really weird that you said that. I was thinking about that very thing. Like I was out going, what
would you do?
My thing. What would I do? Like going home at night alone. And we're now living at a time where this is being hailed, that this idea of being single and never marrying and coming home to an empty house is empowering. You're hearing that message left and right. It's a joke.
What I'm going to say, it's terrible. And what I'm going to say is this: the part that people are not, this is why we're talking about this. The part that nobody's paying attention to is, again, what are you going to do for the second half of your life when it's only you?
Totally.
Who do you go on vacation with? Who do you play with? Who do you go to the park with? Where's the companionship? Where's the kids? My house is full of teenagers because my kids are teenagers. They bring all their friends to my house. I come home, there's 5 or 6 kids in my house. The energy is amazing. They're good kids. They're fun kids. Like what it brings to our lives, my kids and their friends and everything that goes with that. This is the second part of my life, right? Like I have grandchildren to look forward to eventually.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so people forget kids don't ruin your life. They complete your life. They fill up your life. They make your life. Right?
Imagine if we had constant drumbeat of the opposite message of what we're saying right now. Constantly, all the time. You turn on the TV, whether it was a movie, whether it was a TV show or a commercial, and you were constantly hearing how children add to your life. Yeah. Imagine how that would affect the collective psyche.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Yes,
that's where I'm going. Seriously, like, and I guess even for myself, like I was lucky like you to follow this life path that I wanted children and I wanted to, knowing it's going to be complicated because it is in the beginning, especially, but I didn't even know the rewards, like the love, the connection, the how much it fills up your life. Like, what the hell would I do without my kids when I come home? I mean, me and my wife would go for dinner every Saturday night and watch a movie. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is life? Like, that's not enough life. Like, that's not enough. So, and you guys wake the hell up, right? Like,
and I think a big piece of that is in the past, I've always felt that a big piece of this is that in the past, previous generations thought long-term as a general rule, like it was part of their thought process. Because they lived through war, depression, they had life was more fragile and it was shorter, and you thought further out. And because the younger generation just doesn't think much, everything's so immediate. So if you can't have it by tomorrow, then you're not interested. But if you actually just shift your focus to thinking 40 years out, which was one of the things I told the young women last weekend at Princeton. Think 40 years out. Don't just think 5 years out. And all of a sudden, your perspective will change enormously about exactly what we're talking about. What are you going to do with the second half of your life? Yeah,
I was at LMU University last week doing the exact same talk, which is just interesting. And, the idea of think in the future. These are your lives. Think what's going to happen, outside of the moment that you're in right now, and the fact that you think, it's all about you, and then all about you, all about you, all about you, and not thinking further enough. And you want to be, smart people learn from others' mistakes,
Definitely.
and we have mistakes all around us. I mean, that's you and I. That's all we talk about, right? Like what's not working.
Yes. Definitely.
So
that's much more powerful than just being told what to do.
Right. So for me, I'm always like blowing sounding the alarm. Ladies, wake up, think through, forget what the society or culture says. What is it that you want? Do you want to be a career woman or a woman with a career? And career woman does the opposite. Career woman is all about business, money, career first.
And I bet if you ask that of most people, you're going to get the woman with a career 90% of the time.
Well, honestly, they blank for a second. When I've said that last week in that class, a bunch of 22-year-old young college girls, and they just blank, like blank. Literally,
They had no clue what you meant, or
no, they got it, but they never thought it through.
Yeah.
Right? They just went in front of me. I saw them all go
Yeah.
up in their heads. Eyes got big. Wait, career woman with a career. Wait, career woman with a career woman.
Interesting.
And all they're being taught, all they're being, like shoveled in their faces all day long is money, career
woman
first.
Yes.
And, and then by adding this bit, when I said a woman with a career, as a woman who's going to actually plan for the full life, which is not the way they feed it to you as okay, good, interesting, better, right? The idea of children will ruin your life, and men that can be trusted, and you got to just get your own first. And it was you should have seen the room stopped, like the room got cold, and I had to like bring him back and sort of walk him through it. So now these ladies have a chance to think it through, and that's all I'm doing, right? Sound the alarm, think it through, forget what culture is telling you. You don't want to be statistic or one of my clients or your clients.
It's funny that you just said the room got quiet. That exact same thing happened to me last weekend when I said, just off the cuff, I didn't even think I said anything that profound, but apparently I did. I said, I said, if you took my career away, if you took away what I'm doing right now, standing up here before you, tomorrow, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. But you could not flip that. I would not be okay.
Yeah.
And they really heard that. They really heard that.
Beautiful. So that's the mission, right? That's the job.
Yes,
that's
that
what
is.
Like, just sound the alarm, think it through. Nobody really is.
So part and parcel of this is this latest study from September that kind of got a lot of play in the media that goes with what we're talking about, and that is the fact that marriage is down, marriage rates are down, and that this particular study, and there's different ways of looking at the fact that marriage is down. There's cohabitation is up 1,000-fold, and that's people just there's simply fewer people getting married. But this particular study focused on the fact that it blamed the lack of quote unquote economically attractive men being available to women who are now, let's say, in their late 20s or 30s.
Yep.
Okay, so this was a ding, 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 ding as soon as I saw this. Of course, I was all over it because, hello, that's hypergamy. That's hypergamy. And so let's explain to people. I mean, most of our listeners know what that is, but the significance of that is huge. That doesn't get any play in the media because the idea is that men and women are the same and women should never depend on men, and so therefore hypergamy is old news. It doesn't exist anymore. So hypergamy is when a woman looks for a man who's of equal or higher status, or at least in terms of salary, preferably education, but definitely salary, so that she knows that when the time comes and she becomes pregnant and vulnerable, she knows she's going to need to depend on a man to take care of the money portion so she can take care of her baby. This is evolutionary biology. It goes back forever, and we are no different. This study proves that we're no different with that than we were 100 years ago, even though women are now economically independent.
Yep.
It's nature.
Well, it's nature again, right? And good Lord, where do I start? It's instinct nature for women to feel safe. Interestingly enough, men don't have that, right? So when a woman attains a certain level of success in her career, let's say she becomes a nurse, right? So hypergamy will have her instinctively, she'll be able to marry or start a life with somebody her equal and or higher. So she'll be able to date, or marry another nurse or male nurse, or a doctor or a surgeon, right? So sideways or up is hypergamy. Never down. She will never marry the guy in the cafeteria that wipes the floor, right? Somehow that's not. But men exactly have the exact opposite. Men love to bring women up in lifestyle by their doing, their power, they're they hold themselves accountable for themselves, and will love to. Any doctor would love, to bring up the cafeteria lady who's a cute little butt, whatever, right? That's instinct the other way. The problem with hypergamy for women is the more powerful you are, the smaller the pool gets. We know this. There's statistics on this. Men marry much younger, right, than than women that decide to have careers, right? So when women decide to have careers, they by the time they get to the 40s, they're looking for men. Well, men are already gone. Men have been
Yep.
married already, right? Men marry in their 30s or so. Men marry younger, and they look for this. They find that they're more values. They're more likely to marry, you know, in their late 20s and early 30s. That's men. So by the time women come around in the 40s plus looking for a guy to marry, well, the ones who like to marry, want to marry, or, you know, have the character to be that guy is already gone. So the pool is smaller. The ones who are left are the ones who either have less character, aren't interested in marriage, whatever. There'd be all kinds of reasons. Some of them are divorced. They're not interested in doing that again. So there's that pool. Just got really small in your 40s with the choice of men available. Throw in hypergamy, right? This pool got even smaller. And I hate to say this, but like women forget this again, right? Like your sexual market value is high when you're in your 20s and early 30s. So, right, the sexual market value, like as women get older, the sexual market value fades. And again, and the temperament of a masculine woman is not attractive. So again, there's that pool that disappears, right? Where men, when they get older, they typically get more resourceful, have more resources, actually are more attractive because they have power. So if you go with with what culture is teaching, women are shooting themselves in the foot, one layer at a time, all the way up to their 40s, and then wonder why they can't find men, or men don't commit, and men aren't interested in them, and men. Well, there it is. All of it is right there. You waited too long. You're like the pool is gone. You have like a drip going, and
I love it.
And all of you are looking for that one guy who may be available in that drip.
Oh, and I can't tell you how many women I have that I know now who are begging me, like I have an answer of what to do when you're in your 50s and you're divorced once or twice and you can't find any good men, and they're so desperate, and and they're not willing to quote unquote settle, but in fact at that point you're going to have to. I mean, when I say settle, I mean you're going to find somebody with baggage. You're going to find, you know, you're really only, I said about one woman I know, I said that your best solution is to find somebody who's a lot older, a lot wealthier, and whose children are all grown, and then maybe you'll have a few years of happiness at that point.
Well, yeah, it's what's interesting too, because men as they get older, it's interesting. So young men are all about, you know, they're so testosterone-y. They're all about, you know, being masculine and pushing and fighting in the world, and that whole, like, you know, leave me alone type thing, right? Like the young men would rather be left alone. Like leave them alone, leave them alone, leave them alone. That's testosterone. That's chemistry, right? There's a need to be alone and sort of hide and push back and not being distracted, and right. Men would rather be left alone when they're younger. And I say to women, you know, imagine who you have to be for him to rather be with you than be left alone. That's the woman you want to be. Understand what men need.
That's very good.
What's interesting, it's true though, but what's really interesting is when men get past their 50s, their testosterone levels have dropped drastically, and a lot more. They don't want to be left alone. They want to bond with women. They want to be close. They don't want to be left alone. They're radically different.
You see, I know, and you see that that's why the men always remarry, right? When they get divorced, and women don't. We're just never on the same page. What is it with men and women? It's terrible.
Well, no, right? A lot of that is, you know, nature and the bodies, right, and chemistry. But this is the good news for my ladies that I talk to, right? So let's cash in on that, right? So you missed out on the beginning of the men who want to get married, right? The ones that are left to divorce or whatever. But however, when they get to be older, as you are getting older, looking to bond, right? These guys actually are interested in spending, like, being with you. Like, they don't want to be left alone. So, you know, there's that big gap in the middle. But
That's
how, you know, you could get, you know, the market reopens with older men, but now you have to be willing to be with an older man. You have to be willing with a guy who's kind of set in his ways. You have to be willing with a guy who's going to tell you how to do life, because they're very opinionated. They're very much grounded in who they are, and they could be difficult to deal with, right? But they want to be with you. So, okay, like this, keep that option open, but it's a different challenge, but it's really actually available.
Oh, my goodness. We could go on and on, Andre. I know, but I have to get to emails, so I'm going to sign off with you. Okay. And thank you for joining me, and we will we'll pick this up next time when we talk next time. Tell people where they can find you.
So my website is projectequinox.net. That's where you find all the materials that I do, and you get access to my email if you want information or interest in coaching, and all this stuff is on the website. Is andrecoaching1@gmail.com. What you really want to do, and invite your guests to listen to, is my podcast, because we talk about all this stuff. You and I talk about plus, and the podcast is called How the Culture Gets It Wrong. So you can go to iHeartRadio and just dial How the Culture Gets It Wrong, and it'll pop up. iHeartRadio, Stitchers, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. So you have 5 places to go get it. So no reason not to.
Yep, it's a great match for what we do here, so I love it. Okay, thanks, Andre.
Okay, darling.
We'll talk to you next month. Bye. Okay, so now we're moving to some of your emails, which I haven't done before, but I get a lot of emails at Suzanne@thesuzannevenkershow.com with a lot of questions and comments, so I'm just going to pull out a few every now and then and answer them. So here's one from Scott. Do you have any advice for the woman who bought into the lies, accumulated student debt to acquire multiple degrees, and now feels trapped as the primary breadwinner in an inflexible career, even though she has had a change of heart and would rather be home with her small children? Or is it a matter of living with her ill-advised choices and doing her best to keep her children from making the same mistakes? So there's actually a couple of answers to that. I spoke with somebody in my coaching session a few weeks ago who's in that exact boat. And because she and her husband had been very frugal over the prior 7 years, she's now pregnant with, she has a 2-year-old and she's pregnant with another, and she wants to stay home. And he's worried about the finances, but she feels like it's manageable because they've been frugal. So she's going to put together a, chart to kind of show how it will be manageable over the next 5 years, let's say. And a lot of people I have found are very surprised at how much goes out the door with that second income that will not if you are home. So obviously the biggest one is the childcare. So in this case with this woman, she had a nanny. But even if you have daycare, once you start playing with the numbers, you realize how little you're actually bringing in. It's a lot more doable than people realize. I mean, you'd really have to both be making high six figures for it to come out in the wash just from a financial standpoint, which is not most people's story. So again, it's about thinking differently than you've been taught to think. And when you do that and crunch the numbers, you find that it is possible. But as far as, buying into the lies, I mean, you can't make somebody have a change of heart. They have to have some sort of experience that causes them to start to think differently about these issues. There's no question that debt and getting degree upon degree and postponing child rearing and then trying to stay home can be very difficult because you spent so much money on your education. So every situation is going to be different. There are going to be people who absolutely can't manage it, but it depends on your partner as well and the decisions that you've made there. To me, the answer is that, yes, it's always possible to have a change of heart and to change your tune. There's another woman I know who I've kept up with for some time who is very unhappy as the breadwinner, and her husband is not the breadwinner, or a very small breadwinner, and she's absolutely miserable, and she knows that she made the mistake in her choice of a husband, and she's stuck in this boat. And so this is a very, very, very real problem that I cannot begin to tell you how many women I hear from who are in this boat where they are the primary breadwinner and don't want to be. They want to get out of it. They don't know how they got into it exactly, or they just listened to the culture and accidentally got into it. But whatever the case may be, for me, as the receiver of these emails and coaching sessions, that's the number one theme that I'm seeing. So I happen to know how big of a deal this is. And it's very taboo to talk about, but these are people who deserve our attention and help. Here's another one from Calvin. Hello, Suzanne. Your last blog post spoke to me because I also had a strong-willed mom in the house as a kid. She was a fantastic mom, staying home and supporting us children every way she could, but it seemed to me that she always would get irritated if she didn't get her way. Maybe I was overly sensitive as a child, but as I grew, I learned to tailor my behavior to suit her needs because anything was better than the loss of affection I felt when she was upset about something. Now I'm so accommodating that I can't seem to make any decision outside of a vacuum. Whenever someone else is around, I instinctively defer to them. When I finally achieve the strong, emotionally secure masculinity I'm working towards, how do I find a woman who can support that and whom I can support in turn? In short, how do I find the non-feminists? Okay, so there's a book, actually, a new book out, that's called The Masculine in Relationship. And the author, G.S. Youngblood, I'm going to be interviewing here on this podcast in 2 weeks. I would highly recommend. I just begun reading this, but I'm very excited about it. I'm really psyched to speak with him. It's all about how to deal with this new power dynamic that exists in our country today with the strong woman and the soft man, which is at this point an epidemic, in my opinion. All because of the narrative that women should always be living in their masculine at all times and be like men to achieve this faux concept of equality. And women are stuck. They're stuck in that mode. And if you've been raised by a mother like that, that has a ripple effect on the kids and their relationships when they grow up. And the only way to break that cycle is to learn how, for women to learn how to be in their feminine, and for men to learn how to be in their masculine, and understanding what that means and why that polarity is so necessary for a relationship to thrive. So I'm really excited about that in a few weeks. Yeah, so that's my suggestion on where to begin healing on that. Okay, so that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed this different kind of podcast. Like I said, I'm going to be doing this once a month where I talk to you directly, and Andre will be joining me, and then I'm going to take some of your emails, and that'll be, every third episode or so. So look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week.